Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're kind of carrying on where we left off on last week's video. Last week's video, we worked on the door latches, I made the cowl function, welded up a bunch of holes, and then kind of where we left it off, I was working on the rear window, made up the rear window wood, which is inside here now, kind of pushed in place but not screwed into place. So there's a metal drip tray that comes down around here. I started working on it last week. I have it over on the bench. We'll talk about it a little bit. So I still have the list. I've crossed quite a few things off. There's 5 or 6 more things left to do. So I'm going to push and try and get all of it done in this episode. We'll see. Things always don't go to plan. So over here on the bench, like I said in the last video, we had the original drip tray that was on the back of the Moncton Coupe. One point of note is they're quite, I guess there's a lot of distortion in this panel, which led me to believe that even though it was stamped, even when I make my panel, I'm probably going to have the same thing when I bead roll this stuff into it. But you know, the conclusion is that I don't think this is really, well, could probably weld a piece on the bottom of it, but the metal is really, really thin. My choice was to go make a new piece. For the New York Coupe, the gentleman supplied me with a much better piece. It's much more solid. But again, if you notice, there's a, and this is normal, but it kind of leads me to believe I'm going to struggle making that piece. And I did on the first piece. So his piece was much better. It's stronger, but someone had cut the bolt holes off on the side. But it also gave me a pattern for the caps that go on the end of it. So, because what this is, the window goes up and down into it. There's a tray on the bottom. It's capped off on this end. It's also capped off on this end, and it comes down on an angle. And there's a little tube that comes out here, and there's a hole. It goes into a hole in the floor to basically drain the water away. So over here on the bench was my first attempt. It was much thicker metal, but again, I pre-stretched some, but I still had the same effect of what the original is, which is okay. It's not relatively straight. Didn't quite get my dimensions exactly right, my bending radiuses, but that was okay, and it was a trial piece. So over here, over by the bead roller, I have some pieces that are made up. They actually turned out pretty good so far. I haven't really done any straightening onto it, but as you can see here, there's a bead that's up, and then there's beads that are down. And what I did was on the English wheel, I really tried to stretch that out quite a bit. I probably did 10, 15 passes on a relatively stiff setting with my highest crown wheel to basically try and concentrate the stretching out where I was going to roll those beads. And it was actually relatively successful. So what I've done my first bend here. I have 2 other bends that I can do the first one in my break here, but I can't do the second one just because of the shape of this. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to go over to a friend's place who has a much more robust break that actually can cut in and make my bends like I did over on the other piece. So hopefully I can take the camera over there and show you while I do that, but that's the next step in working on these 2 pieces. As you can see from the time lapse, I was able to go over to my friend's place and use their metal brake, which had a deeper throat, in order to make this bend here. What I did, I continued on with this piece. There are, on the originals, I think, well, it's over there, but on the originals there were D nuts placed on the back of here so that the screws would go in, because you can't reach it to put a nut. So what I just did, all I did is I welded a 1/4 nut on the back of the holes. I drilled the holes. And then, like I was saying, on the edges of it, they had soldered in pieces like caps. So it's kind of like, this is like a tray. So where the, where the rain will come down, it would come down into the tray. And then the other thing that has to be done is probably a little hole here with a metal tube, and a drain will go out. So this piece is pretty much done. It's ready to go back into the coupe. I did make a second one up for the New York Coupe. It's right here. Everything is done. I've only drilled the pilot holes for these, because what I'll do is I'll put the wood in the car, I'll set it up, and then I'll basically make sure I've got the holes in the right place before I finish it, and put the nuts on the back, just in case it's a little different than what the Moncton Coupe is. So that's ready to go for the New York Coupe when we're ready to go. Once I put this in, there is another piece, and I'll show you in the back of the New York Coupe I'm going to make. I don't know how well we can see it, but there's a metal panel here. It's just sitting in place on back of this, I guess you call it a package tray. I'm not really sure. It goes behind the seat. But this metal panel here would go on that, and it holds the window crank mechanism here. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to make one of these panels, because on some of the coupes, they don't have the package tray. They just have a metal bar that goes around, and then this is bolted to that piece that I just made. So what I'll do, I'll cut it up, I will draw the lines onto it, I will show you stretching the metal, and then bead rolling it, because I didn't do that previously. can see from the time-lapse video, I made this panel here. I showed you stretching out these different points here on the English wheel and then bead rolling it, and of course putting it on the brake and making the bend. There isn't much distortion in this, so that's actually pretty good. It's very little distortion, so that means that I stretched that material enough. So this piece goes on top of the tray like that, and what it does, it holds the window crank mechanism through that hole you can see there. So I'm just getting ready now to put these together in the coupe. One other thing was on the pieces of wood, there was a small piece of metal here that held the, I guess the window guides in place, the felt guides in place. It had a hole here, so I had to make these up and put them on the pieces of wood so they're ready to go. Not entirely sure yet what goes here, but given there was a hole up top, I'm thinking there might be another piece of metal that the window guides hook into place, but I'll research that, figure that out, and let you know. So right now the next step is actually to take the wood, put it in the car and kind of put this together and go to the next step. So here are the next steps. Got a little bit ahead of myself here. As you saw a couple minutes ago, I had made the sheet metal pieces, did some more work on them. The two pieces of wood are installed. The little brackets on the side for the felt that holds the window are in place. What I figured out is that there's a hole up top here and a little piece of metal where the I guess the strips of felt, they have hooks on them. So one hook goes up here, and then you take this panel off and the other hook goes on the bottom. So they're all set up ready to go for the owner to put it in. The front plate is put on. One other thing is that there's supposed to be a drain. Like this tray here, as I said before, the way these cards were made up was that they kind of didn't keep all of the water out. They just, whatever water got in, they drained it away. So the water would come down through here, come into this tray, and there's a piece of steel tubing I've soldered on the edge of it. So this will actually have a tube that'll go down to the floor. Owner will do that. Same way in the back and the trunk, the drip edges that go along the bottom, there's actually little cups and a little drain that will go with the bottom of those and drain the water out. So this is in place now, put a coat of paint onto it. Happy with it. The owner was over and took a look at it, so he's good. The one missing piece, as we talked about earlier, there's actually a piece that kind of comes along the side here, goes across here, and attaches at these 2 points. Could have made it up, but the owner says he's going to go buy one or make one himself. He's got the stuff, so that's fine. The other thing I was working on was the bottom of the B-pillars. Like the B-pillars on the outside are made up, but there's like an inner piece here that I make up to kind of simulate the way the originals are done. So this is one piece that's made up for this side. It's basically ready to tap in and weld in, and then I'll drill a hole here large enough to put the bolt that goes down and holds it to the frame. Over on this side, don't know if the camera lady can see, but that one is already installed. I already welded it, put it in place, put the nut and bolt on it. So we're kind of wrapping up the stuff here on the 5-window coupe. I think there's about 4 or 5 things left to do on the list. The owner is going to come by and pick it up this weekend. So we're going to try and basically wrap this up on the next video with the final few things and introduce you to the next project that's coming in the shop to take this place. So that's it for this week. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. And of course, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. Everybody take care and have a great week.